Hey, and welcome back to another episode. I want you to picture this. The workforce is flipping upside down. Gen Zs and millennials aren't settling for old school bosses anymore. They're craving purpose, authenticity, work-life harmony, empathy, flexibility, and leaders who actually listen, mentor, and help them grow. Top-down traditional styles, they're losing top talent fast. This is where Scott Abbott steps in. He's a battle-tested company builder with 35 plus years of launching and scaling businesses. He's raised millions in venture capital, and he's authoring bestsellers like Level Up to Professional and The Ultimate Blueprint for Young Pros to Thrive, and his leadership powerhouse, Boss Up. He also wrote a new book called Boss Up Moments. Scott bridges the generational gap with practical, humane solutions that build resilient, inspired teams. So Scott, welcome to the show. This is Tim Staton with Tim Stating the Obvious. What is this podcast about? It's simple. You are entitled to great leadership everywhere you go, whether it's to church, whether it's to work, whether it's at your house, you are entitled to great leadership. And so in this podcast, we take leadership principles and theories and turn them into everyday, relatable, and usable advice.
And a quick disclaimer, this show, process, or service by trademark manufacturer, or otherwise does not necessarily constitute an implied endorsement of anyone that I am employed by or favors them in representation. The views are expressed here in my show are my own expressed and do not necessarily state or reflect those of any employer.
Thanks for having me, Timothy.
Hey, so I was just wondering, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, very long story short, and I only say that because I'm six decades into the world. Speaking of the world, been blessed to live and work all over the world. Grew up basically overseas, London, Paris, and Madrid, and I think it's a lot of maybe why I became an entrepreneur. I had to adapt and adopt and was put into new situations a lot. And about after a year of my first job, I became an entrepreneur, started my first company. Probably my biggest shame and fame is started a firm in the .com internet era, raised about 15 million in venture capital, grew too fast, too quick, and I was part of that .com crash. But then after that, I actually had the good fortune to go work for a 30-something billion dollar company and took on about $870 million division. We grew up to about $2 billion. And I learned a lot. They hired me to be an intrapreneur versus an entrepreneur. And then I've done stints with big companies like IBM and some of the big consultancies, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. And about 12 years ago, I started Straticos, which is effectively Boss Up. Straticos was solopreneurship, me, myself, and I. And we migrated a few years ago into Boss Up. And we created what we now call the Boss Up coaching solution to about 75 coaches around the world. Plan to have about 200 by the end of this year. And effectively, we've built what we believe is the most modern, flexible, and inclusive way for startup, small, and mid-market companies to leverage a tailored business operating system, harnessing practical, intelligent AI, and coaching. So we're here for both the coaches. Typically, we work with independent business consultants, coaches who tuck us into their solution and service and impact and income model. And then we provide support and materials to the leadership teams of their clients. That's what we do. So a little bit of my story. I was born a Hoosier, born in Fort Wayne, as I said, lived everywhere, but now I'm a big IU guy. Go Hoosiers.
So you said you founded Boss Up Solutions now, and after it kind of like merged from Stratico. Was there a like pivotal moment in your career of being an entrepreneur where you were like, you know what, I really need to start this up, and like why?
Yeah. So back to my background, I'd worked with some of the largest industrial systems integration projects. I mean, led them, part of it, multi-year, multi-million. You may recall the old acronym ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. And so back to my first days, it was big, it was intense, it was expensive. But I was always an entrepreneur. I kind of had a sweet spot for startups and small companies. Today, I do venture capital and investments in addition to running the firms that I participate in. So I just, frankly, I always felt there was a better way, especially for the small mid-market startup companies to leverage proven what we call concepts, tools, and disciplines. Take some of the best books in the world, like, the Jim Collins of the world and the Lencioni's, and fuse it into a cohesive, tailored business operating system. And that's what I did at Straticos. But it was, again, me, myself, and I. I was lonely. And without sounding cliche, I wasn't making as much impact as I wanted to. So about 3.5 years ago, we created Boss Up, converted a lot of that material along with our partners at 90. 90 is a software platform we leverage to implement a cohesive solution that includes leadership training and coaching and consulting along with tech. And now, as I said, we're 75 or so coaches rounding up to 100 plus. So it's really, without sounding cliche or corny, I wanted to give back more. I wanted to pay it forward. I just wanted more, in a good way, people who could benefit and leverage and take what we and had worked really great at Straticos to another level.
What do you see through your extensive coaching and what you do to help those folks? What do you see as like one of the top areas that people struggle with?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the ego, IQ, EQ ratio, I think, right? Oftentimes we've heard the expressions imposter syndrome or fake it till you make it. I think a lot of people get in their own darn way. And so if you don't have somebody in your life who's going to nurture, support, sometimes kind of, in my one-on-one coaching, I start with the fun way, how you doing today? You want to kick in the shorts, a pat in the back, hug, a little bit of all the above. And I think that's it. Secondly, I do think there's inhibitors. I think a lot of the traditional approaches are expensive. They're time consuming. Most entrepreneurs, small mid-market companies are focused on what we call in the business, and they don't have a lot of time to work on the business. So motivated by impact and income, both for them and for our coaches. And that's what's kind of cool too. All boats rise with the same logic of let's bring proven, tailored frameworks, templates, systems. And again, nobody really wants to just buy a system, template, or a framework. They want a solution. And that's where we come in. And so to solutionize what historically has been a little bit out of reach, we have some fun thinking like we democratize the ability for, our niche market to leverage and benefit from some of the concepts and technology and resources that historically only the Fortune 2000 had benefited from. So I think that's kind of cool. It's affordable, it's modern, it's flexible, and it's accessible to a market that, for a long time really didn't have that ability to bring that into their firms.
I love the fact that you do that, because that's one of the main reasons why I started the show, is to get leadership out there and to start talking about this and then get people together so that they can reach out to make themselves better leaders. And your firm is one of them. So when you say traditional approaches just aren't working anymore, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think, again, I would encourage everybody to use this little thing called AI in search to, don't just take my word for it. But I do think a lot of the traditional approaches are what I would call one size fits all. They tend to be a bit rigid and inflexible. And not that I'm pandering to the Z generation or what have you, but we all the right amount of diversity and awareness. And typically the traditional frameworks and formats and systems were very locked. And what I mean by that is you did it their way or else. And I just think that's a little outdated. We again stress and emphasize that we have a modern, flexible, collaborative, inclusive, affordable way. And so we do bless, if it's appropriate, that if you want to tuck in additional technology, you've got assets or applications that aren't necessarily out of the box, so to speak, but you want to customize it, modify it. For example, right now, a lot of our coaches are starting at the start of the year, but if somebody starts working with us mid-year, they may not want to focus on vision or values. They may not want to be so inclined to get into the strategic and the tactical. They may just want to get better scorecards, and they want to get the mechanics and the engineering down, and they need to batten down some of the fine details, right? They're already good. They just want to get great. You follow me? So I think traditionally the approach was do it our way. And I believe we're more empathetic. And one of our frameworks is called CLEAR, and CLEAR stands for the pursuit of clarity and keeping things clear, but it's also an acronym. That acronym stands for collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient. And we embrace that almost as principled values. And then we call BS on ourselves. If for some reason or not, somebody says, hey, you're telling me to do it this way, but let's talk about it. Let's discern it. Let's debate it. And let's do what's right for them. Not just because the franchise or something that was written 25 years ago says it's the way to do it, irrespective. We're trying to be more mindful of the here and the now.
Yeah. And speaking of the here and the now and where the future is going, there's a huge deficit in the workforce with, hands-on stuff like electricians and stuff like that. And a lot of folks will go to a trade school and become an electrician, and maybe they'll want to start a small business, but that's not really taught in the trade school. So is this like an approach or avenue that people could look out for and reach out to you?
Yeah, we love the trades. Frankly, I'll probably say I'm a little biased. Over the course of my tenure, and I've been in tech for 40-something years, but 85% of my personal clients, and I've personally worked with 150 companies. I've done thousands of of facilitations and sessions and coaching and one-on-ones, our coaches included. But I'd say a good 75% have been trade-centric: construction, HVAC, plumbing, roofing, houses. Why? To your point, because a lot of them haven't been as blessed as some people. They'll go to those halls of academia, the blue collar, get your hands dirty, get some work done. And so I think what we provide is a lightweight, proven, again, tailored way. And, a lot of those people are craftspeople and tradespeople. And so they appreciate the touch, but they also appreciate the elbow grease, the grit, and our ability to be, aware of where they've been, where they're at, where they're going. And I would say, because of what's going on in the economy, do your own homework. But we believe in the next decade, we're going to have almost a renaissance associated to the trades, to blue collars. In fact, we've got coaches that are coming in specifically to our community with that niche and that focus. Literally, people have sold their company, they're bored, they don't want to retire, but they want to help others. And so we've got a good amount of coaches that are really focused on trades and craftspeople in the companies. And then last but not least, you may have heard this new concept called entrepreneurship by acquisition. So what we're also seeing is some traditional people in corporate America whose jobs maybe are going away. One of the many derivatives, AI, and people want to be lean and, always profit first. And we see a lot of people actually going and buying companies and then going to those companies and cleaning them up and implementing new business operating systems and bringing a fresh set of eyes, right? Because you can't read the label from inside the box. And so we see that happening too in the trades, and that's pretty neat to see as well.
It's amazing that that's happening and going on. And let's talk about multi-generation then real quick, because we see a lot of younger folks going into, the blue collar work and getting into that. They're not necessarily going to academia, but there's still that need for business management and some hard skills. And then there's also some need for some soft skills. So what is your approach to that?
I'm going to apologize with a wink. Our approach is boss up. And so this is our first book. This is Boss Up, the implementation and benefiting from a tailored business operating system, AI, and coaching. Think of this like the mechanics, the engineering, like a chassis in the car. And then Boss Up Moments is really the soft skills, the EQ, helping people with mindsets and overcoming conflict and dealing with setting good boundaries and understanding the importance of energy and leadership and accountability. You with me? And so, yeah, I'll name two of them. We've actually got a relationship with Ivy Tech, one of the large, probably, blue collar trade centric schools, IU, Kelley School of Business. We've got a partnership with them, which I think proves to their credit. They're mindful that it's 2026 and they don't necessarily teach that. But together with them and us, we now can come in with, head and heart and systems and soul and profit and purpose. And so I see a lot of academia stepping up. Yes, you said it, Timothy. You don't need to take our word for it, but the classic requirement for a diploma, spending 100, 200 grand a year, it's not really as relevant. In fact, I think I saw a study that said 90% of Fortune 2000 aren't requiring diplomas anymore. And then you tuck in AI, right? So AI really is what we think it's the humanization. AI and good tech and systems and process. So final frontier, humans. And making sure that us humans are as qualified and competent, left brain, right brain, again, purpose and profit and strategy and execution. And that's what's going on. And I think that's where we're at. We've been there for a long time. And now we're benefiting, I think, from some of the socioeconomic trends that are not going away. What I just said, people want to be lean. The workforce is going to be brought into a more consolidated fashion. And now I think it's the era of trades and entrepreneurship, and then people realizing they can work with folks like us, boss up coaches, and help them get from here to there faster, better, safer, and more affordably.
When it comes to the younger generation and with the coaching stuff, what is like the number one trend that you're seeing that they're demanding?
But man, I can't believe you asked me that. And I promise everybody, we didn't rehearse this. So I'm going to go back, look at IU and Kurt Signetti and our team. Signetti is probably, a lot of people would say he's old school, right? He reminds me of my dad, and he's stern on one level. He's focused. He's a disciplinarian. He likes structure and process. And you know what? They love it. And when I say they, his players. So I believe, and we've actually kind of proven it through not just anecdotal, but a bit of data-driven science, that the 20-somethings, the Zs, if you will, they actually are fond of structure and protocol, and they like to have roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities defined. Yeah, do they want to have a macchiato at 3:00 and maybe work in a hybrid workplace? And I prefer the word harmony, not balance, when it comes to work and life. Yeah, so there's always got to be some meet me in the middle compromise. But yeah, what I often joke, I'm Gen X and the Zs are awesome. It's these darn millennials that kind of mess things up. I say again, with a big wink, please don't send me, silly emails about it, just having some fun. But surprisingly to a lot of people, I don't find them to be entitled. I don't find them to be unenergetic. I don't find them to be unwilling. And that's where I'm going to go back to moments and boss up. The challenge is, do they have the leadership? Do they have the guidance? Do we have this blend of purpose and profit? Certainly, we know that they prefer to work with social enterprises, kind of like us, that give back to society and help with under-resourced entities. No doubt, right? Who doesn't as a good human? So I think we got a good crew coming in this generation, man. And that's what's also fun about what we do. Again, the fusion of engineering and mechanics, but also the soft stuff around, making sure people are getting along and collaborating, dealing with conflict, overcoming dysfunction, right? That's the key. And I think they're willing. They just need mentorship and, again, good structure. And if they've got that, I think we got a good generation coming in the workforce.
I agree with you on that one. I see it all the time. You mentioned a good point about harmony instead of work-life balance. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and how you kind of share that with folks?
Yeah. So I've got my basement office here and I got a little workout area and, I got one of those balls that you use to do sit-ups and everything. But, I also got the ball that you stand on at your desk. And that's hard to be balanced, right? Think about a balance beam or walking the line, Balance is always a little bit funky. Harmony is like having a good meal and music. Sometimes, the spice is a little higher, but it still goes well with the proteins, like a band. Sometimes the treble's a little up. Sometimes you're hitting the bass hard. Sometimes the strings are more prominent than the percussion. That's harmony. Life is busy. Life is uncertain. We don't live in vacuums. So I think if we just, and again, I got a moment in Boss Up, so I'm passionate about this one. But if we sort of think about the concept of harmony more and the discipline of appreciating the seasonality, we have good days and bad, give each other grace and grit. I often joke, my midlife crisis was I didn't get a Porsche or do dumb things. I started getting tattoos, and one of them stands for grace and grit, just as a reminder and a commitment to do both. And that's where I think harmony comes in. Harmony respects grace and grit and good days and bad, and empathy and authenticity. Balance, that almost is passive aggressive. It's almost like perfection. It's unachievable. You follow me? So just a perspective, but that's the one that we tend to share and try to teach and coach.
I really like that perspective because I think, work-life balance is BS. You're never going to be able to balance it. So I love your analogy of harmony. So when it comes to AI and how we deal with it as leaders and human beings, what is your approach when it comes to leadership?
So I'll just give you to everything, right? Own AI, don't let it own you, right? I've been in tech for 40 years. I was at the pioneering days of the .com era. In fact, do your own homework. I joked that IBM and, Al Gore invented the internet, but me and my buddies at IBM took it to this whole concept of e-business and e-commerce. And that certainly blew away a lot of people. And there's goods and bads and pros and cons. And by the way, AI's been out for 30-something years. My last class in college was on machine learning and AI. So, ChatGPT just happened to do a lot of things happen with tech. It took enterprise technology and commercialized it, right? So it's not a new technology per se. So I've had the ability to know a lot more than just what became popular in the last couple of years. With that said, I would just lean into the fact that it's a co-pilot. It's an ally. So for me, my AI is called Vector. I use AI everywhere. My team uses it. We have different forms and formats of applications and agents. But first things first, you're the boss. By the way, with 2 S's on this one, not the one. And you own it. Don't let it own you. And for most people, let's be honest, we're not Elon Musk type of tech guys, right? So most people, it should just really be thought of in that way, right? As an assistant, as a support. It's going to help clarify some uncertain dynamics. It's going to help lead you in more confidence and certainty, right? It's going to complement your critical thinking. And in Boss Up Moments, I have each one of the moments has video, it has AI, it has prompts, but I also encourage instead of AI, just journal. Pick up a pen and paper, and then maybe done, just double check it with AI. So last but not least, I'll just say this as a almost a plea to everybody. You start it, you finish it. If you ever, ever, ever do AI, cut and paste and send it without validation and your touch and whatever, you're on Uncle Abbott's not so good list, man, because that's where it gets problems. So keep it practical, keep it intelligent, keep it embedded in the middle, if you will. Don't let it lead and don't let it be the last resort.
AI is good, but you definitely got to read what it puts out there, do your own homework and balance and check that thing, because it will get you in a lot of trouble.
It is. And I would just say, even if you're not a fan, and we teach and coach this, so we talk about roles, accountabilities, responsibilities for everybody in the organization. They should have KPIs. They tie into OKRs. I don't want to get in the science and the art of everything too much, but I would tell you, if you don't have AI legitimately as part of your business work in life, your format, your formula, you are actually already behind the eight ball. Again, I'm not asking you to build, new era techs and robots, and we're not talking about brain eating type stuff, man, at least not yet. But if you don't have ownership of it, it's going to get ownership of you. I'll just leave it at that.
You bring up a good point, because I keep hearing, through my kids when they scroll through on the internet, there'll be the ad where like your dad uses ChatGPT like Google. So in your opinion, what do you think the right way to use AI is as you incorporate it into your system?
Yeah. So, again, I go back to, when I started, I had a dictaphone. I was in field management sales and I was in the car for hours, and I had an assistant and I talk into the dictaphone and then I get back. And I can tell you this right now. I use Vector, again, my version, kind of a customized version of ChatGPT, just be frank, but we're using Gronk and DeepSeek and a whole bunch of others, right? So we're not betting on one horse. But I use it exactly like that. I have no problem with people of certain jobs and functions using it like a different version of Google, right? On the other hand, I'd also say be careful how much you use it, because environmentally it does make impact. So not to overplay that card. But just be careful, be mindful, like most things in life, right? Think about most things is back to harmony. So yeah, I would say know thyself, know thy function, know thy role, goals, and expectations. And again, maybe Q1, Q2 this year, figure out how to integrate, incorporate, leverage, and benefit from AI. And for some, it is just a stronger, more intensive version of Google. For others, I can tell you, it's a major route to 10X, which is a concept most people have heard about. But you don't 10X just because you're doing more. You 10X because you're also doing less. Right? Let's be honest, even business is like checkers. It ain't that complicated, man. People make it complicated, but we want to think like chess players. And there's only two ways to make more money: sell more stuff and decrease expenses. And even for the small companies, if you can have a 75 basis point improvement on efficiency and effectiveness, if, for example, I am able to use AI to take out 5 to 7 hours of middle work that historically has been, let's be honest, administrivia, and I don't have to do it, and I can put that 5 hours into value add, growth, revenue, profit generation. That's the beauty of it, right? How do we take this asset and use it to make more impact and income? But also, again, I caution as well, like everybody does, don't let it get the better of you. Don't let it freak you out. And like most things in life, if you own it, even if you don't really know what you're doing, you still are making progress.
I kind of want to take it back to a human perspective real quick. We've talked about the Gen Zers. We've talked about the Gen Xers. And then you got the millennials right there in the middle who are leading folks. And the Gen Zers are saying, hey, I need structure, I need guidance, I need leadership. So this show is about practicality. What is one thing or two that somebody listening to this and says, you know what, I need to be a better human being and leader at work? What is one tool that they could put in their kit bag today to improve their leadership?
And I'm going to say with the wink besides boss up moments. But I say that with candor, not with, self-promotion, boundaries. And having a framework and a structure. A lot of people use the word expectations, and you got to set expectations, but expectations can actually be a little lazy and, again, almost passive aggressive and troublesome. Ideally, once those expectations are set, you want to make sure that whoever's involved are clear, and I prefer to call them agreement-based commitments. And if you have agreement-based commitments between, again, a boss and people that work for them, millennials and Zs and boomers and X, and again, you keep it clear, right? You agree to pursue clarity, and if you're not, keep asking. You agree to be collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, resilient, and you live back to what people get wrong about business operating systems. They have this theory, if they don't know better, that yuck, it's bureaucratic, Systems are getting a big rap today for reasons we know, but systems don't make systems bad. People do. So first things first, I'd say come together, have what we would call a same page or a clear the air meeting, and agree to, hey, this is our framework, this is our template, and we need to set good and healthy boundaries to ensure we have healthy accountability. And here's again counterintuitive to a lot of people. In fact, I'd say this is a great quote from Isidore Sharp, the founder of Four Seasons. Systemize the predictable to humanize the exceptional. And counterintuitive to a lot of people, the more rigorous you are, and I'm going to go back to Signetti, the more rigorous you are about the X's and O's, right? The playbook, the easier it is to call an audible. The easier it is to overcome the hiccups in the giddy up, which will inevitably happen. The easier it is to overcome he said, she says. So counterintuitive to a lot of people, the more structured and appropriately systemic and committed to visible, trust but verify type of principles, the more you're actually able to get along and communicate and overcome those inevitable, I want Mexican, you want Italian, and that's keeping it light. We know there's a lot of other stuff going on in society that makes it worse. So again, agree to agreement-based commitments, have the right structure, systems, and protocol. Again, I know those are like big words that sound a little corporate-y, but it's true because the more you do that, in fact, I think it's Collins who says, magic happens when a spirit of entrepreneurship meets a culture of discipline. Boom, right? So again, counterintuitive to a lot of people, but that's what I'd say. And I do think the Zs are into it. I think a lot of times the millennials aren't because to their credit, they kind of got stuck between a rock and a hard place. And they were the first to get devices and the internet. And so they're a little bit, I'm going to give them grace. They got to get collectively over 50. And I think we might see something different. But yeah, that's it, man. I just think if you commit to the playbook, you know your values, you guys are visible on what needs to be done, chances are you're going to have more success versus frustration.
I think there's a lot of people who need to go back and re-listen and re-watch that segment right there. Those last like 2.5, 3 minutes and kind of take notes because you said some really powerful stuff really fast. You go back and reread it and re-listen to it, take some notes, and then, reach out to Scott. But Scott, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you? Or is there something that we didn't talk about that is just still burning and you're like, I got to talk about it?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that, Timothy. And, we talked before we got on, but thanks for that question. I love it. And my answer is, I can't put my finger on it right now. I like what you just said about emphasizing, a lot of people think redundancy or listening to things, over and over, yuck. Absolutely the opposite. Redundancy and repetition is the mother of learning. And so we have a fun little quote. You got to hear it 7 times here for the first. And I'm probably naturally redundant anyhow. It's the teacher in me. So I preemptively give myself guff when I'm doing sessions and coaches say, hey, you're probably going to hear this a few times, but there's a reason for that, right? Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So I would just say, I think we've covered it, but we'll just summarize it. Don't let the, paradigm or paradox or because you thought systems and structure and rules and all these things are bad. Just look at the world, man. Cars don't work without chassis. Homes don't exist without foundations. Think about everything that's important in your life, planes and trains and everything that we do from an inputs and outputs. If those weren't relatively systemized and had structure and people had agreement-based commitments, you follow me? What chaos. And so respect that. Then back to, again, the time that we're in now, respect that, but now make it yours. Back to even the benefit of AI, personalize it, tailor it, bring it into your world, right? And add what you think makes it special to you, right? Put on a different set of threads and maybe have a little zip in your step, right? But just respect the fact that to build, run, grow, scale a great company, and I would argue, Timothy, to build, run, scale, grow a great life. Number one, if you ain't growing, you're dying. So you're always learning, you're always improving. But at the same time, don't sweat the fact that you're not where you are yet. It's a great word, yet. I'm not there yet. So just find that harmony, respect systems along with soul and purpose, with profit and this duality, and just move forward. Move forward, progress over perfection, and do your best to do your best. But start with commitment and make this a stractical. That's a fusion of strategic and tactical reality in your life. And if you do that, whether you're a business owner, a leader, a contributor, you're just new to it, but, make it happen. You follow me? And momentum builds momentum. So that'd just be my final thoughts. And again, I'm appreciative of you, the show, and everything you're sharing. What would you say above and beyond from your perspective? What would you like to say as a parting thought, given our conversation and where your head's at?
The fact that you hit the redundancy on, you said, over communicate. So I always tell people, if you think you've said it enough, keep saying it more. And then when you're sick and tired of hearing about it, somebody else is just now hearing it for the first time. So always keep doing that. And then the other thing, like you just said too, and I was kind of chuckling a little bit because I said, make it your own. Like, what is it that you're doing that it's special because you're doing it? Nobody else can do what you're doing. And you are a individual that brings something valuable and special to the world. And it's only valuable and special because you're doing it. Nobody else can do what you're doing. And so I just chuckled aside because I was like, oh, all those things are the things that I was still thinking too, just slightly different. I appreciate you saying it. And for everyone listening and watching this, go in the descriptions. You're going to get the links to Scott's books, Boss Up Moments, and to his website. And then if you're good, I'll put your LinkedIn as well so people can reach out to you.
Love it. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Timothy.
No, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
All the best to you and everybody.
As always, thank you for stopping by and checking out this episode and listening to it. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Before we go, I'd like to ask a favor of you if I could. If you could please share this episode with one or two people who you think might like this topic. If you haven't followed or subscribed on the platform that you're listening to, and hit all the bells and icons and all the whistles so that you know that when we post another episode, you'll be alerted, please go ahead and do all that before you go. If you got some value out of this episode, please leave a review or a comment so we can help spread the show to other people who might be interested in the topics that we've talked about here today, but may not have found our show yet. Again, thanks for stopping by. I'm Tim Staton, stating the obvious.